My daughter called me in the middle of a stormy night, her voice shaky and weak. "Mom, I'm so cold. Help me. Help my son." "Where are you?" I asked desperately. Andy left me at a bus stop. It hurt so much, and in that instant from the other side of the line, I heard a gut-wrenching scream. I'm glad you're here. If you're watching this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it's reached. The rain was pouring down, like it wanted to drown our whole small town. I was sitting in my small kitchen, the dim yellow light illuminating a pile of freshly washed clothes. My hands slowly folded each piece, trying to keep my mind busy. It was my habit, the habit of a mother used to worrying, to keeping everything in the house in order. The drumming of the rain on the tin roof was a roar that seemed to drown out every other sound. But when the phone rang, I jumped. The screen lit up, showing the name I was always waiting for, always worried about: Clara. I answered immediately, my hands trembling, as if I had a premonition that something was wrong. "Clara, honey," I called out, my voice broken by the whistle of the wind on the other end of the line. The static was terrible, as if my daughter was in the middle of the storm. Then a weak voice, almost a whisper, came through. "Mom, I'm so cold. Help me. Save my baby." I felt my heart stop. The voice of Clara, my daughter, whom I had cradled since she was just a tiny thing, was now so faint I had to press my ear to the phone just to hear her. "Where are you?" "Clara, tell me where you are." I practically screamed at her, but I only managed to catch a few stray words. "Andy left me at the bus shelter. It hurts so much." And then a sharp, gut-wrenching scream tore through the line, as if it were ripping the night apart. After that, total silence. The call dropped. I stood there frozen, the phone still clenched in my hand, as if letting go would mean losing her forever. I dialed again, over and over, but I only heard the cold, automated voice. "The number you have dialed is not available." My head was spinning. Where was Clara? What did she say about Andy? What bus shelter? And the baby? My grandson? What was happening? I stopped thinking and started acting. I grabbed the old raincoat hanging in a corner and took the keys to my husband's truck. He had passed away 3 years ago, leaving me his old pickup with its dim headlights and wipers that screeched with every swipe. I ran out to the garage, not caring about my soaked shoes or the rain that beat hard against my face. I only had one thought in my head. I had to find Clara. The truck pushed through the white curtain of rain, its weak headlights struggling to pierce the dense water. I drove to the hospital where Clara had her pregnancy checkups. She was almost due, and I remembered in her last call she told me she was going for a checkup today. But when I got there, the nurse at the front desk shook her head. "Miss Clara Salgado was discharged early this morning. Her husband came for her." My heart sank again. Andy had picked her up. Then why was she calling me for help in the middle of a storm? I couldn't believe it. I started the truck and headed to Clara and her husband's house, about 6 miles from there. The little house was on the outskirts of town, where she had moved with Andy after they got married. I pounded on the door, screamed her name, but the house was dark, without a single response. Only the howl of the rain and wind. I went back to the truck, a knot in my stomach. Westridge Road, the only route from the hospital to their house, popped into my mind as the last clue. I drove, stopping at every bus shelter, getting out of the truck to yell her name into the rain. "Clara, honey!" My voice was lost, carried away by the wind. No one answered. The first shelter, the second, not a soul, only rain and darkness. When I reached the third one, as the truck's headlights swept across the tin roof, I saw something that made my blood run cold, a cream-colored maternity coat, the same one I had bought for Clara when she was 7 months pregnant. It was soaked on the dirty ground next to the base of a pole. Nearby, there was a shattered cell phone, its screen broken into 1,000 pieces, as if someone had thrown it violently against the ground. I got out of the truck, my legs shaking so much I almost fell. I picked up the coat, clutching it tightly as the cold rainwater ran between my fingers. "Clara," I whispered, my voice choked. I walked into the bus shelter, into a dark corner, and then I saw her. Clara, my daughter, was huddled in a corner, trembling from head to toe, holding a newborn baby, red and wrapped in a thin receiving blanket. Her face was pale as paper, her eyes closed, her lips purple. The baby in her arms, my grandson, was tiny, fragile, not crying, not moving. "Clara!" I screamed, running to her. I knelt, the icy water soaking my pants to the bone. But I didn't care. I quickly pulled a towel from my bag, wrapped the baby in it, and took off my jacket to cover Clara. "Honey, Mom's here, I'm here," I repeated over and over, my tears mixing with the rain. I got them both into the truck, placing the baby on my lap, trying to keep him warm. My hands trembled as I dialed 911. "Please come quick, my daughter." "My grandson." I could barely form a sentence. I was just crying. The person on the other end asked where I was, and I just managed to shout, "The 3rd bus shelter, Westridge Road, please, hurry." I stayed in the truck, holding Clara, trying to warm her with my own body. She opened her eyes slightly, looked at me, and her voice was a thread about to break. "I don't want to die." Andy abandoned me. Then she passed out, her head falling onto my shoulder. The ambulance arrived after 10 minutes that felt like an eternity. A young paramedic quickly checked on Clara and the baby. Her voice was rushed but reassuring. "It's a good thing you got here in time. She gave birth alone. The baby has hypothermia and she's exhausted." I just nodded, unable to speak, tears streaming down my face. They loaded them both into the ambulance, and I followed in my truck, gripping the steering wheel to keep from shaking. In my head, Clara's words repeated endlessly. Andy abandoned me. Rage washed over me, but I knew it wasn't the time to think about him. I just wanted my daughter and my grandson to be safe. At the hospital, they were taken to the recovery room. I sat in the hallway, my clothes soaked and my hands still trembling. I didn't dare close my eyes, didn't dare think about what would have happened if I had arrived any later. Every time the door to the room opened, I flinched, hoping for good news. Finally, the next morning, a doctor came out to talk to me. His voice was serious but firm. "Your daughter is showing signs of physical and mental exhaustion. You were lucky to have saved them both." I nodded, thanking him, but my heart was still heavy. Clara was out of danger, but what had happened to make her give birth alone, in the middle of a storm, in an abandoned bus shelter? And Andy, that son-in-law I once trusted, what had he done to my daughter? The days following that stormy night, I walked around like a ghost. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the image of Clara huddled in the corner of the bus shelter, holding her tiny baby, her lips purple. 3 days passed where I barely moved from the hospital, sitting outside the recovery room waiting for any news, until the morning of the 3rd day, when Clara woke up. I could finally breathe. She was lying in the hospital bed, her eyes tired, but they lit up when she saw me. "Mom," she called, her weak voice melting my heart. I took a hand. It was freezing, as if the cold from that rainy night was still trapped in her body. "You're okay now, honey, I'm here," I whispered, holding back my tears. Clara was very weak, but she recognized me. I asked her about what happened that night, hoping she would tell me everything. But she just shook her head, her gaze lost, repeating the same phrase. Andy left me, because I talked back to him. Hearing that broke my soul. Talked back? Clara was so gentle. Since she was a little girl, she had never dared to contradict anyone. How could they blame her like that? I insisted, "What do you mean, talked back? What did you say to him that made him leave you in the middle of a storm?" But Clara just lowered her head, pressing her lips together, and whispered, "I'm scared. I don't want you to worry." I squeezed her hand, trying to hide the fury growing inside me. Scared? What was she scared of? Andy? Or that I wasn't strong enough to protect her? Andy, the son-in-law I once considered a good man, never showed up at the hospital. Not one visit, not one call. I called him, my voice trembling with rage. "Andy, where are you? Do you know she almost died?" But on the other end of the line, there was only silence. And then a curt text message appeared on my screen. "You have no business meddling in my family's affairs." Reading it, I wanted to throw the phone. Family? He dared to call what he had done to Clara family. I sat there in the hospital hallway, staring at the flickering fluorescent lights on the ceiling, and I promised myself I wouldn't let this go. I couldn't let Clara continue to live with a man like that. On the fourth day, the doctor discharged Clara. She was still weak, but I didn't want her to stay in the hospital a minute longer. I took my daughter and my grandson to my house, the little house where I had lived for decades, the one that was once filled with Clara's laughter when she was a little girl. I made the baby a bottle, changed his diaper, and then sat next to Clara, watching her hold her son with that same lost look in her eyes. "I'm going to take care of you two," I told her, trying to make my voice sound firm. "You don't have to worry about a thing." Clara just nodded, but I knew she didn't quite believe me. There was something in her eyes, like a locked door that I didn't know how to open. Not even a day had passed when, while I was making some soup for Clara in the kitchen, I heard loud, sharp knocks on the door. I opened it, and standing in front of me was Mrs. Sharon, Andy's mother, with 3 neighbors behind her. She was wearing a dark floral dress, her hair pulled back in a tight bun, and her face was as hard as a rock. "Linda," she said, her voice so loud the whole neighborhood could hear, "we've been looking for Clara for 3 days. The girl has postpartum depression. She ran away from home, and you've got her hidden here without telling her family." I froze as if I'd been slapped. "Postpartum depression?" Clara ran away. Before I could say anything, one of the neighbors, Mrs. Rose, chimed in. "I've seen Andy looking for his wife every night, poor thing. Don't you feel sorry for the boy?" I couldn't hold back any longer. "Sorry? Sorry for what?" I shouted, my voice trembling with rage. "It was Andy who left my daughter at a bus shelter in the middle of a storm to give birth alone, and you dare say I don't love her?" The crowd fell silent, but their eyes were full of doubt. Then I heard footsteps behind them. Andy appeared, getting out of his familiar silver SUV, wearing a white shirt, carrying a can of formula, faking concern. He looked at me, his voice calm but cold. "Linda, Clara needs to come home. I don't want to make a scene, but if you keep this up, I'll have to call the police. You and her, you're both showing signs of being mentally unstable." I felt the blood rush to my head, clenching my fists so hard my nails dug into my skin. He dared to say I was unstable, to threaten me with the police? I was about to lunge at him, to scream in his face, but then I heard Clara's voice from inside, soft but firm. "Mom, I'm okay, let me go. If they stay here making a scene, it's going to affect you too." I turned and saw my daughter at the door, holding her baby, her eyes red but trying to stay calm. It broke my heart. Clara, my shy girl, was now trying to protect me when she was the one who needed protection. I wanted to hold her back, to scream that there was no way in hell I was letting her go back with that man. But the looks from the people outside, their whispers, and Clara's silence left me powerless. I had no proof, nothing to show what Andy had done. Only my word, and a mother's word, in their eyes, wasn't trustworthy. I stood there, watching Clara get into Andy's truck with the baby in her arms. He opened the door for her with a caring gesture, but his gaze passed over me, cold and defiant. Mrs. Sharon walked behind, saying nothing more, but her mocking smile seemed to say that I had lost. When the truck disappeared, I stood in my doorway, feeling like my world was collapsing. I had let my daughter go back to that house, where I knew she wasn't safe. The tears came, but I didn't let myself cry for long. I picked up the phone and called Mark, my younger brother, the only person I trusted to help me. "Mark," I said, my voice choked, "we have to find proof. I can't let this go as if nothing happened." The night they took Clara back to her husband's house, I couldn't sleep a wink. My little house, which used to be filled with my daughter's laughter, now only had the ticking of the clock and the sound of my heart pounding in my chest. Early the next morning, I drove to my brother Mark's workshop. He worked in a small corner that smelled of oil and wires, a place where I always felt safe when I needed help. Mark was sitting in front of an old laptop, typing quickly, surrounded by scattered electronic parts. I pulled up a chair, sat across from him, and told him everything. The call in the rain, the soaked coat, the scene with Mrs. Sharon, and Andy taking my daughter away. My voice was shaking, not with fear, but with rage. "Mark," I said, pulling Clara's shattered cell phone from my bag. "I found this at the bus shelter. See if you can recover anything. I need to know what happened to her." Mark took the phone, examined it from every angle, squinting as if he were deciphering a puzzle. "Sis," he said in his deep voice, "with the phone this busted, recovering the data is going to be a problem. But I'll try. And about Andy, that guy's no fool. He knows how to make everyone believe he's the perfect husband. If you want to confront him, you need stronger evidence than just your word. What if we install something in his house?" I froze. "Install cameras? Microphones?" The idea filled me with both hope and fear. "Is that legal, Mark?" I asked quietly. Mark shrugged. "Legal or not, do you want to save Clara? If he was capable of leaving her stranded in a storm, he's not going to stop there." I nodded, though I felt uneasy inside. But I knew Mark was right. Andy was too clever, always acting like the devoted husband in front of the neighbors. I'd seen him bring Clara flowers in full view of the whole neighborhood, smiling as if nothing was wrong. But behind closed doors, I didn't know what my daughter was enduring. I ran a hand over my face, trying to push away the helplessness. "Okay," I said more firmly, "let's do it. But very carefully. I don't want Clara to get hurt." Mark nodded and pulled a miniature camera from his toolbox, no bigger than a coin, and a recording device as thin as a sheet of paper. "Sis, I know Andy usually takes Clara to the supermarket to buy diapers on Saturday afternoons. He loves to pretend he's an attentive husband. That's our chance to get into their house." I nodded, my heart racing. I wasn't used to doing things behind people's backs, but for Clara, I would do anything. On Saturday afternoon, I drove at a safe distance, following Andy's silver SUV. He took Clara to the supermarket on the outskirts of town, about 10 minutes from their house. I parked in a discreet corner and watched Clara get out of the car, holding the baby, walking slowly as if she had no soul. Andy was beside her carrying a bag, smiling and waving to an acquaintance in the parking lot. He acted so well, I almost believed he really cared about her. But I knew it was just a facade. When they went into the supermarket, I sent Mark a text. "Now." Mark moved like lightning. He was wearing a dark jacket, a cap, and he slipped into the house through the back door, where Clara used to leave a spare key under a flower pot. I waited in my car, my heart pounding, my eyes glued to my phone, terrified someone would discover him. 10 minutes later, Mark sent me a text. "Done. The camera is in the artificial plant in the living room, the microphone behind the curtain, near the baby's crib. Sis, now all we can do is wait." I let out a breath, but the anxiety didn't go away. I knew that what I was about to see would hurt me, but I needed the truth. That night, I sat in my living room in front of Mark's laptop. He connected the camera, and the image of Clara's house appeared. I nearly stopped breathing when I saw her sitting on the couch, holding my grandson, her face pale and her eyes empty. The baby was sleeping on her lap, so small, his tiny hands clutching his mom's clothes. Then the door opened and Andy came in, his shirt wrinkled and his brow furrowed. He threw a bag on the floor and yelled, "I come home dead tired from work and this house is a pigsty. You're so useless." His voice was sharp as a knife, every word a wound to my heart. Clara said nothing, just lowered her head, holding her son tighter. He walked over and pointed his finger in her face. "If I didn't bring money into this house, you two would have starved to death by now. Why can't you be half the woman Bianca is, huh?" Mark and I sat in silence. Bianca? Who was that? I had never heard Clara mention her. But Andy's tone, the way he compared her to someone else, made my blood boil. I wanted to jump into the screen and pull my daughter out of that house, but all I could do was clench my fists, my nails digging into my palms until it hurt. Mark turned to me, his voice grave. "Sis, this is evidence, but we need more. He's not just emotionally abusing her, he's hiding something else. Have you ever heard of this Bianca?" I shook my head, feeling like an even bigger secret was about to be uncovered. That same night, the second video left me breathless. It was midnight. My grandson started crying, and Clara went out onto the balcony with him in her arms, trying to calm him down. She sang to him softly, her voice trembling, as if she were fighting not to break down. Then the balcony door opened and Andy came out in a t-shirt, his hair a mess. He didn't yell, but his voice was icy like frost. "If you dare to come out here again, don't expect me to come pick you up a second time." Clara stopped singing and turned to look at him, but she said nothing. She held her son tighter, as if it were the only way to protect them both. He went back inside, slamming the door shut, leaving Clara alone under the dim streetlight. I turned off the screen. I couldn't take it anymore. I felt a fire inside me, but I knew I had to stay calm. If I acted on impulse, if I went to their house right then, I would only make things worse. A week after Mark and I installed the cameras in Clara's house, I felt like I was living in a nightmare. Over 10 hours of footage, more than 30 short clips that Mark meticulously extracted, showed that the son-in-law I once trusted was not just a cold man, but a monster. He insulted Clara, called her useless, compared her to a woman named Bianca who I still knew nothing about. But even though those videos made my blood boil, I knew they weren't enough. I needed proof from that stormy night, the night Andy abandoned my daughter at the bus shelter, leaving her to give birth alone in the middle of nowhere. That would be what he couldn't deny, what would stop him from continuing to act like the perfect husband. I decided to go back to Westridge Road, to the place where I found Clara. I brought a printed photo, one of Clara wearing the cream-colored maternity coat I had bought for her. It wasn't a great picture, just a quick snapshot I took when she tried it on, but her smile in that image pierced my soul. I drove, stopping at every bus shelter, every roadside diner, every small gas station. I showed the picture to everyone I met, vendors, security guards, even the truck drivers who were taking a break. "Have you seen this young woman?" I would ask, my voice hoarse with exhaustion. Most of them shook their heads. Some looked at me with pity, as if I were an old woman looking for something that didn't exist. At a small gas station near the third bus shelter, where I had found Clara, I ran into an older man with gray hair, cleaning the windshield of a light blue cargo truck. He wore an old jacket, his hands were rough, but his movements were slow and careful. I approached him, showed him the photo, trying to stay calm. "Sir, have you by any chance seen this young woman? She was wearing a cream-colored coat. She was pregnant. She might have been around here about a week ago." The man looked at the photo, frowned, and then shook his head. "No, I don't really remember her. A lot of people pass through here." I didn't give up and asked, "Were you here last Tuesday night?" "Around after 10, it was raining really hard." He stopped cleaning the glass, looked at me, and seemed to search his memory. "That night? It was pouring, you could barely see the road. I thought I saw someone standing by a post at the bus shelter up ahead in my headlights, but I figured it was a broken sign. I couldn't stop, my truck carries gas, it's too dangerous." My heart beat faster. "Do you have a dash cam?" I asked, my voice trembling, not daring to get my hopes up. The man hesitated, watched me for a moment, and then nodded. "Yeah, but I'm not sure if that video is still saved. Let me call my nephew to bring the laptop. If you remember the day and time, I can check." I nodded repeatedly, thanking him over and over, feeling like my heart was going to burst with hope. I stood there next to his truck, the cold wind making me shiver, but I didn't care. Just one piece of evidence, just one recorded moment, and I could prove what Andy had done. 2 hours later, I was sitting in a small coffee shop next to the gas station, across from the truck driver and his nephew, a skinny young man with an old laptop. The boy opened the video files from the camera, going through each clip until I said, "There, stop," around 10:36 on Tuesday night. He rewound in slow motion, and then on the screen, I saw it. Andy's silver SUV, parked right under the roof of the third bus shelter. I recognized it instantly. I had seen it too many times, its headlights an unforgettable memory. Andy got out, wearing a black raincoat, opened the passenger door, and yelled something at the person inside. It was raining so hard you couldn't hear anything, but I saw him raise his hand, point, and then slam the door. The SUV sped off, leaving behind a figure stumbling in the rain. It was Clara in her soaked cream-colored coat, her hands on her belly, walking with difficulty before collapsing. I was speechless, tears welling up without me realizing. "That's her," I whispered, covering my mouth. The truck driver looked at me with a gentle expression, as if he understood my pain. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. If I had known it was a person, I would have stopped." I shook my head, trying to hold back my sobs. "No, it's not your fault." "Thank you, really. Thank you so much." I asked for a copy of the video, and he nodded, telling his nephew to transfer it to a USB drive for me. When I held that small drive in my hand, I felt like I was holding a ray of light in the darkness. This was the proof, something Andy couldn't deny. An accidental witness, a complete stranger, impossible to manipulate. That night I took the USB to Mark. He reviewed the video, comparing the time on the screen, 10:36 p.m., just as I remembered. "Sis," Mark said, his voice firm, "this is enough to take him to court. If we combine it with the recordings and videos from the house, we can prove not only that he's emotionally abusing her, but that he abandoned her in a moment of emergency." I nodded, but my heart was still heavy. One afternoon I was sitting in my small living room, the yellow light from the old lamp illuminating the laptop screen. I rewatched the video Mark had just sent me, each frame like a stab to the heart. Clara, my daughter, sitting on the couch, holding my grandson, her hands trembling as she fed him, her pale face, her lost gaze, as if her soul had been ripped out. Then I noticed a small detail that made my blood boil. Andy's cell phone, which was on the table next to the couch, suddenly lit up. It was an incoming call. He glanced at the screen, got up quickly, and went out to the patio with the phone. I turned up the volume, trying to hear every word. His voice came through, so sweet it was fake. "Bianca, my love, you told me you were tired last night, right? Get some good rest today, okay, sweetheart?" I flinched, gripping the edge of the table. Bianca, that name again, like a ghost that wouldn't go away. He kept talking in that tender voice, calling the person on the other end sweetheart without the slightest hesitation, even though Clara was just a few feet away. I looked at my daughter in the video. She kept her head down as if she couldn't hear, or maybe she was just used to his cruelty. My heart ached. Andy wasn't just emotionally abusing her. He hadn't just abandoned her in the rain, but he was also shamelessly talking to another woman right in front of his own wife. I turned off the screen. I couldn't take it anymore. I felt a fire inside me, but I knew that if I wanted to save Clara, I had to keep a cool head. The next morning, I decided to investigate Bianca. I didn't know who she was, but her name had become a key piece of the puzzle. I went to the neighborhood where Clara lived, where the neighbors used to gather to gossip. I stopped at Mrs. Teresa's laundromat, a chatty, middle-aged woman who knew a lot. I pretended to ask casually, "Teresa, have you heard of a young woman named Bianca around here?" She stopped folding clothes, looked at me, and smiled slyly. "Bianca? Bianca Rios, the pretty one who lives at the beginning of 5th Street. Rents a luxury apartment, always well-dressed, but she has a bad reputation. They say her boyfriend is an office worker, but she spends money like she's rich. Who knows who's paying for that lifestyle?" I nodded, thanked her, but inside I felt a whirlwind. An office worker? Andy was just an administrative employee. How could he have the money to support someone like that? That night, I couldn't sit still. I took my truck and drove to 5th Street, where Teresa said Bianca lived. I parked in a dark corner, near a small convenience store, and waited. At 7 o'clock sharp, Andy's silver SUV appeared. I recognized it immediately. It had haunted me since that stormy night. He got out wearing a white shirt and his hair neatly combed, looking like a model citizen. Then, a young woman with long, shiny hair and a tight dress came out of the building. He hugged her in his soft but intimate way, and then gave her a kiss on the forehead, as if they were husband and wife. My heart was pounding, my hands shaking as I pulled out my phone to record. I tried to hold it steady, capturing every moment. He smiled, said something to her, and then they both went into the building hand in hand. I drove home with my heart in pieces. I wasn't just angry with Andy. I ached for Clara. She had been living with a liar, a man who not only abused her but also betrayed her. I went to Clara's house that same night when Andy still hadn't returned. She was sitting in the living room holding my grandson, her eyes tired. I pulled up a chair, sat beside her, opened my phone, and showed her the video. "Clara, look," I said, my voice trembling. "This is Andy, and this is the woman he talks about, Bianca." Clara looked at the screen, her hands gripping the baby tighter. And then she broke down, sobs tearing through the silence. She said between gasps, "I knew it. I saw strange messages on his phone once. I asked him, but he laughed and told me I was crazy. And that night, the night he left me at the bus shelter, it was because I dared to confront him." I hugged Clara, feeling her body tremble in my arms. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked as my own tears fell. She shook her head. "I was scared, Mom. He said if I told anyone, he would make everyone think I was crazy. I didn't want you to get into trouble." I felt a deep bitterness. Clara, my good girl, always trying to protect me, even when she was the one who was hurt. I stroked her hair, trying to stay calm. "I'm not going to let him keep hurting you. I promise." But in my mind, a bigger question began to form. Andy was just an administrative employee. Where did he get the money to rent a luxury apartment, buy expensive clothes, and maintain Bianca's lifestyle? I remembered the videos, the way he always bragged about earning the money to support Clara and the baby. Something didn't add up. I decided to dig deeper, and the next morning, I went to Andy's company during lunchtime. I introduced myself as his mother-in-law, asking to speak with management about an important family matter. The receptionist, a young woman named Anna, led me to a waiting area. As I sat down, she whispered, her voice concerned, "Ma'am, haven't you heard? Our bosses are investigating Andy. There are reports of unjustified money transfers from inside the company, and everyone suspects it was him." Anna's words were like a flash of light in my head. Money? So Andy wasn't just cheating on and abusing Clara, but he was also involved in something shady at his job. I thanked Anna, trying to seem calm, but inside I felt a hurricane. A week later, I received an unexpected call. The phone rang at noon while I was sitting in the kitchen, a cup of cold coffee in my hand. The number was unknown, but the voice on the other end was clear, polite, but firm. "Mrs. Linda, this is Rodolfo Ibarra, Executive Vice President of the company where Andy Salgado works. We have received a copy of the dash cam video and some recordings of the psychological abuse in his home. We need to see you immediately." I froze, the cup almost slipping from my hands. My heart was pounding, a mix of hope and fear. Did someone believe me, or was this another of Andy's traps? I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Of course, I'll be right there." "What time works for you?" Mr. Ibarra replied. "Today at 2 in the afternoon at the main offices. Bring any documents you have. We need to review everything thoroughly." I arrived at the offices, a modern glass building in the city center. Sitting in a small conference room, I felt out of place among the leather chairs and polished wooden table. Mr. Ibarra entered, a middle-aged man with graying hair and a sharp gaze. He was accompanied by a woman with black hair, dressed in a gray blouse, with a look so alert she seemed to see right through things. "I'm Valentina Pineda," she introduced herself in a firm voice. "Internal auditor. I've been assigned to investigate the suspicious money transfers related to Andy Salgado." I nodded, trying to hide my nervousness. "I brought everything I have," I said, placing the USB drive and a folder of documents on the table. "This is what I've gathered on Andy." Valentina opened her laptop, displaying a detailed analysis chart. She pointed to the screen. Her voice was monotone but convincing. "In the last 3 months, $25,000 has been withdrawn from the company account, divided into multiple transactions, and transferred to a secondary account in the name of Bianca Rios. There is a history of expenses for a luxury apartment on 5th Street, spa services and expensive gift cards." I looked at the numbers, the words on the screen, not surprised. I already suspected Andy was into something shady when I learned about Bianca, but seeing the proof so clearly filled me with rage and pain. He wasn't just abusing and betraying Clara. He was stealing money to support another woman, Has he been doing this for a long time? I asked, my voice trembling. Valentina looked at me. At least 6 months. But we just discovered it, thanks to an internal report. I handed them the USB drive. Here is everything I have, I said, trying to stay calm. The video from the camera in Clara's house, the recording of Andy insulting her, the clip from the dash cam at the bus shelter, and the photos of him with Bianca. Valentina took the USB, plugged it into her laptop, and reviewed each file. Her expression didn't change, but Mr. Ibarra frowned, drumming his fingers on the table. Mrs. Linda, he said, this is very compelling evidence. It not only proves the abuse, but also strengthens Andy's motive. He was afraid Clara would discover his infidelity and the financial fraud, so he looked for a way to silence her. I nodded, feeling as if a stone had been lifted from my chest. Finally, someone believed me. Finally, I wasn't alone. 2 days later, Mark called me in the middle of the night. His voice was rushed. Sis, Andy's company just issued a statement. They've suspended him indefinitely. He's under internal investigation. I sat up in bed, my heart racing. Really, Mark? They acted that fast. Mark chuckled softly. Sis, with what you gave them, they couldn't ignore it. But be careful. Andy isn't one to give up easily. Mark's words sent a shiver down my spine. I knew Andy was clever, but I didn't imagine he would react so quickly. The next morning, I opened Facebook to check for neighborhood news. But what I saw left me frozen, a long post on Andy's profile, with a title that paralyzed me. When you just want to be a good husband, but they turn you into the villain. He wrote like a victim, saying that I, his mother-in-law, had slandered him, made up stories, destroyed his family. He posted old videos, him holding my grandson, cleaning up spilled milk, kissing Clara's forehead while she slept, all with soft background music. I watched with trembling hands, my blood boiling. Those images were real, but I knew they were just a facade. How long had he been putting on this show? And how many people had believed him? Under the post, his mother, Mrs. Sharon, left the first comment like a stab to my heart. My son is taking all the blame, but the reality is that Clara was diagnosed with postpartum emotional disorder. She herself said her own mother wanted to harm her. And now that mother is blaming my son. That morning my phone wouldn't stop buzzing, social media notifications piling up. Messages, comments, even calls from distant relatives I barely remembered. A niece called me, her voice hesitant. Auntie, I didn't realize my cousin's husband was suffering so much. Please don't make the problem bigger, okay? I gripped the phone, wanting to scream, but I stayed silent. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I was too tired of having to explain myself. I opened Facebook and Andy's post hit me again, like a play designed to make me the bad guy. Shared over 400 times, hundreds of sympathetic comments, calling him a devoted husband, harassed by a controlling mother-in-law. He wrote a long text, every word calculated. Linda, my mother-in-law, has always wanted to control Clara's life. She never accepted me, never accepted her daughter's happiness. Even though Clara doesn't trust me, I still change my son's diapers, buy his medicine when he has a fever, rock him to sleep every night. I read it with trembling hands, the blood rushing to my head. He called me the shadow that silently destroys her own daughter's life. He posted short videos, him holding my grandson with a big smile, cleaning up spilled milk, kissing Clara's forehead while she slept. The music was soft, the lighting in the videos edited to make everything seem natural and warm. But I knew it wasn't the truth. It was a perfect performance, staged to hide what he had done. I wanted to scream, to post a response, but I knew if I did, I would fall into his trap. He wanted me to lose my cool, to become the troublemaking old busybody the malicious comments said I was. Under the post, unknown profiles jumped to Andy's defense, insulting me. That old woman is jealous of her daughter's happiness, trying to break up a young family. How evil! I read and felt a sharp pain. The neighbors who used to smile at me, who had had coffee with me, now looked at me with suspicion. I went to the market and felt their sidelong glances, the whispers behind my back. That's her, Clara's mom. They say she slandered her son-in-law. I lowered my head and walked faster, but my heart felt heavy. I had fought to protect my daughter, and now I was the one being criticized. 2 days later, I was with Mark in his workshop, reviewing the videos from the camera in Clara's house. I wanted to find more proof, anything to unmask Andy's performance. Mark, with his sharp eyes, pointed to a video. "Sis, look at the time. The clip Andy uploaded to Facebook, where he's holding the baby, was recorded on the same day as this other one." I looked at the screen and saw Andy holding my grandson, smiling like a model father. But just a few hours later, in another video from the hidden camera, he slapped Clara in the living room right after she accidentally spilled a glass of water. "How are you going to take care of a child if you're so clumsy?" He yelled, his voice icy. Clara just lowered her head and not daring to answer. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my skin. "Mark," I said, my voice choked. "He recorded those videos to put on an act. Did he know we had cameras there?" Mark shook his head. "No, sis, he didn't know. Those videos are from before. He probably recorded them to maintain an image. But now he's using them to deflect attention." I looked back at Andy's post and saw a comment that made my heart freeze. Mrs. Sharon, his mother, had uploaded a photo of a medical paper with the text, "Patient Clara Salgado presents symptoms of postpartum depression. Recommended to avoid contact with individuals who cause emotional stress." The logo of a well-known hospital was in the corner with an illegible doctor's signature. Under the comment, dozens of people shared it, saying I was the cause of Clara's depression. "That mother is driving her daughter crazy!" Poor Andy, having to put up with a mother-in-law like that. I stared at the screen, feeling like the whole world was turning its back on me. Clara with depression? She had never told me, and the doctors at the hospital didn't mention anything. Could it be true, or was it another of his schemes? That night, I turned on the TV, looking for something to distract me from the attacks, but a brief news story on the local channel left me stunned. The headline on the screen read, "Clinic owner arrested for forging medical documents. Over 40 psychological certificates seized, some used to evade legal responsibility in divorces and disputes." The reporter showed a close-up of the clinic's logo, and I recognized it instantly. It was the same logo from the medical paper Mrs. Sharon had posted. I immediately took a picture of the screen and sent it to Mark and to Rebecca, the lawyer I had contacted the week before for advice. "Mark, Rebecca, look at this. That medical paper is fake," I wrote next to the photo, filled with hope. Rebecca replied instantly, "Mrs. Linda, this is a major turning point. If we can prove the document is fake, Andy's whole act falls apart." Her voice, through the message, was cool but confident, like someone who knows they have the upper hand. Mark came to my house the next morning with a printout of the fake medical document. He enlarged the bottom left corner, where the clinic's registration number was. "Sis, I already checked," he said, pointing to his laptop. "This number doesn't exist in the national health system. That clinic was just shut down for forging documents. He and his mother went too far." I looked at the number, those tiny letters I hadn't noticed before, but which now seemed to open a door to the truth. I nodded, trying to stay calm. "Mark, we have to act now. I'm not going to let them keep hurting Clara with these lies." Rebecca called the district attorney's office to confirm the information about the clinic. A few hours later, she sent me a message. "Mrs. Linda, it's just as you thought. The clinic was shut down last week for selling fake documents for divorce cases and legal disputes. Mrs. Sharon's paper is one of them." I gripped the phone, feeling a new strength. Andy and his mother had staged a perfect performance, turning Clara into the victim of a made-up illness and me into the villain. But now, I had the proof to unmask them. I spent the whole afternoon gathering everything. I took out the USB drive with the dash cam video from the bus shelter where Andy abandoned Clara in the rain. I organized the clips from the hidden camera, the recordings of Andy's voice insulting and humiliating her. I printed the photo of Andy hugging Bianca on 5th Street and Valentina's financial analysis, which proved the embezzlement of $25,000 from the company. Finally, I placed the photo of the news story about the fake clinic on top of everything, like the jewel of my collection of evidence. I looked at the pile of documents on the table, my heart heavy but full of determination. This wasn't just a battle for Clara. It was also for me, a mother who an entire neighborhood had turned their back on, just for wanting to protect her daughter. The next morning, Rebecca and I went to the city's police headquarters. I walked in with a sick folder, feeling like I was carrying my whole life in my hands. The officer who attended to us, a middle-aged man with a serious look, reviewed every page, watched every video. "Mrs. Linda," he said in a grave voice, "what you've brought us is very serious. We will open an official investigation for the crimes of domestic violence, forgery of documents, and corporate fraud." I nodded, trying to hold back the tears that wanted to come out. "Thank you, officer," I said, my voice choked. "I just want my daughter to be safe." He looked at me and his expression softened. "We'll do everything we can." After 2 days of giving statements, the case was forwarded to the family court and the criminal court. The hearing was set for 2 weeks later, a time that felt like an eternity to me. I knew Andy wouldn't just sit back. He was strangely quiet on social media. There were no new posts, no comments from Mrs. Sharon. But I wasn't naive enough to believe he was sorry. People like Andy never stay quiet out of remorse. He was planning his next move, and I had to be ready. Mark called me one night, his voice rushed. "Sis, I just found something. The bank account in Bianca Rios' name is being slowly emptied, transferring the money to several small electronic wallets. He's trying to cover his tracks." I froze. "What do you mean? Is he going to get rid of Bianca too?" Mark confirmed over the phone. "Exactly. I talked to a friend who works at the bank. These transactions started right after Andy was suspended. He knows he's being investigated and he's cutting all ties." I immediately called Valentina and she confirmed it. "Mrs. Linda, our internal records show the same thing. He's using Bianca as a scapegoat, and he only keeps people around as long as they're useful to him." I felt a knot in my stomach. I didn't feel sorry for Bianca. She had chosen to be on Andy's side and had contributed to Clara's pain. But I saw his cruelty clearly. He didn't just cheat on his wife and steal money. He was willing to discard his mistress as soon as she was no longer useful. The morning of the hearing, the sky was overcast, with gray clouds that seemed to crush my spirit. I arrived at the courthouse early, sitting next to Clara in a cold waiting room. She wore a long, pale blue dress and held my grandson tightly, her hands trembling but her gaze firm. I looked at her feeling a mix of pride and pain. Clara, my daughter, once so fragile and scared, was now forcing herself to face the nightmare named Andy. "I'm here, honey," I whispered, taking her hand. She nodded without speaking, but her gentle squeeze let me know she was leaning on me, just as I had always been her support since she was a child. Rebecca, our lawyer, had arrived the night before with a folder full of documents. She reviewed every page, every video, every copy, with the sharp gaze of a warrior ready for battle. Valentina was there too, with a stack of accounting papers stamped in red, her face calm but determined. "Mrs. Linda," Valentina said in a grave voice, "today we will make sure he has no way out." I nodded, trying to hide the anxiety that was consuming me. I had come so far, I had gathered all the evidence, but I was still afraid. Afraid that Andy, with his cunning, would find a way to turn the situation around one more time. Andy arrived 10 minutes late, walking into the courtroom in a light gray suit, his hair combed, feigning calm. He was accompanied by his mother, Mrs. Sharon, and Bianca, the young woman I had seen in the video from 5th Street. Mrs. Sharon was dressed in black, her face hard as stone, while Bianca kept her head down, her hands clasped in front of her. I glanced at Clara and saw her watch Bianca for a moment before quickly looking down, holding my grandson tighter. I knew she was holding back, fighting to keep the pain from overwhelming her. I put my hand on her shoulder and whispered, "You are so strong, Clara. I'm here." She nodded slightly, but her eyes were still full of wounds. The hearing began, the atmosphere in the room as heavy as the sky outside. Rebecca stood up and presented the charges in a clear, sharp voice. She showed every piece of evidence: the dash cam video of Andy abandoning Clara in the rain, the clips from the hidden camera where he insulted and threatened her, the photos of him hugging Bianca, and the financial analysis proving the embezzlement of $25,000. She concluded with the fake medical certificate that Mrs. Sharon posted on Facebook, along with the information about the shutdown clinic. The room fell silent. You could only hear the rustling of papers and the held breaths of those present. I looked around and saw the expressions on some of the jury members change from doubt to astonishment. When it was Andy's lawyer's turn, I held my breath, preparing for a long string of denials. But what happened next stunned me. His lawyer, a short man with thick glasses, stood up and said in a calm voice, "We do not dispute the evidence presented." A murmur went through the room and I felt my heart stop. "They didn't dispute it." Andy stood up, looked directly at the judge, and said in a clear voice, "I admit I made mistakes, but I was not the mastermind. I was only following the orders of my mother, Sharon, and Miss Bianca Rios, who planned the social media campaign, edited the videos, and obtained the false medical documents." The room erupted in murmurs. Rebecca turned to look at me, her eyes wide with surprise. I leaned forward and looked at Bianca. She was rigid, her face pale, clenching her hands so tightly her nails dug into her skin. Mrs. Sharon jumped to her feet, pointing at Andy and screaming, "Liar! You said you would take care of everything, that I should just do what you told me." The judge slammed her gavel, her voice stern. "Order in the court!" But Mrs. Sharon's scream echoed in my head. Andy, the one who always acted like the perfect husband, was now turning his back on his own mother and his mistress. He was willing to sink them to save himself. Bianca remained silent, not saying a word, her head bowed and her hands trembling. Judge Patricia Colmenares, a middle-aged woman with a piercing gaze, asked Bianca to take the stand as a witness. She walked slowly, not looking at Andy, not looking at anyone. Rebecca approached, holding up a bag with a USB drive, her voice calm but loaded with pressure. "We have more material, Your Honor. But the important thing is, Miss Rios, do you have anything to clarify?" Bianca looked up and for the first time, she looked directly at me. Her expression wasn't one of hatred, but something more complex, regret, fear, or both. Then she looked at Clara, and finally at Andy, her gaze lingering on him as if she were weighing something. The room was silent, the only sound the ticking of the clock on the wall. Bianca took a deep breath and said, her voice low but clear, "Yes, I have a lot to say." My heart was pounding, not knowing what she would say. Would she defend Andy or unmask him? I took Clara's hand, feeling how cold it was. "Mom," my daughter whispered, her voice trembling. I squeezed her hand, trying to give her some of my strength. "It's okay, honey," I told her, though I was shaking too. Bianca was there, in front of the whole room, and I knew that what she was about to say would change everything. Bianca, standing at the witness stand, began by taking out her cell phone and handing it to the court technician with a slow movement, as if she were lifting a weight off her shoulders. She opened a series of emails and screenshots, her voice monotone but heavy with meaning. "This is what I have." The technician projected the documents onto a large screen. I saw the messages Andy had sent Bianca. "If my mom finds out about this, blame it all on her. I'll say she did it alone to save face." Then, a detailed plan for the Facebook post written by Andy himself, with his scribbled signature at the end. I froze when I saw the chats with a Robert M., the fake doctor, where Andy agreed to buy the false medical certificate for $300, and finally, a short clip showing Andy calling Bianca to scold her for not editing the part where I was washing the diapers right in the video he used to build his image as a perfect father. The room went silent. I looked at Clara and saw she was holding her breath, her hands clutching my grandson, her eyes filled with tears. I turned to Valentina, and she gave a slight nod, her look seeming to say, "This is the final blow." Bianca continued, her voice firm. "I made a mistake. I thought I was special, that Andy loved me. I know I'm not a victim, but I can't keep being an accomplice to his lies. He deceived all of us. Clara, his mother, and me. Andy, sitting in the defendant's chair, had a pale face and clenched fists. He shouted, his voice cracking, "What are you saying, Bianca? You promised you wouldn't." Judge Patricia Colmenares slammed her gavel, her voice stern. "The defendant will be silent." But his cry echoed in my head, like that of a cornered animal. Rebecca stood up, holding a USB drive, her voice sharp. "Your Honor, we have more documents that confirm this. The money transfers from the defendant's company to Miss Bianca Rios' account, with no justification, coincide with a cycle of fake payroll payments and with the invoices for rent and luxury purchases, which in turn coincide with the dates of the company withdrawals." She presented every figure, every date, as if she were painting a clear picture of Andy's deceit. I sat there, watching the evidence on the screen, feeling a mix of relief and pain. Relief because the truth was finally coming to light, but pain because Clara had had to suffer so much to get to this day. After 30 minutes of deliberation, Judge Patricia Colmenares returned, her face serious but her gaze determined. She slammed the gavel and her voice boomed in the courtroom. "Andy Salgado is found guilty of organized domestic violence, forgery of documents, and breach of trust to commit fraud. He is sentenced to 9 years in prison and the confiscation of his personal assets. His parental rights are terminated, and he is permanently prohibited from approaching Clara Salgado and her mother." The room fell silent, and then a sob escaped from Clara. She hugged my grandson tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Mom," she whispered, her voice choked. I took her hand, not crying but with my head held high. I had fought and we had won. Bianca left the courthouse silently. No one stopped her. I watched her walk away, not knowing whether to feel anger or pity. She had chosen the wrong side, but in the end, she was the one who helped the truth come out. They took Andy away, his face pale, his eyes empty. Mrs. Sharon remained seated in her place, her head bowed without saying a word. I didn't feel satisfaction, only a deep sadness. A family had been broken, not because of me, but because of the lies Andy himself had built. A month later, Clara and I were sitting in my small kitchen. The morning sunlight streamed through the window, lighting up the room. My grandson, little Luke, was in his crib, waving his tiny hands. Clara looked at him and a smile, the first in many months, appeared on her face. "Mom," she said softly, "I want to do something. To help other women like me." I nodded, feeling a warmth in my chest. We started planning the Bright Light Foundation, named in honor of my grandson, to support women who are victims of psychological violence and financial manipulation in marriage. I looked at Clara and saw she was stronger, like a flower that had survived the storm. I was no longer the mother watching her daughter suffer from the outside. I had walked through the rain, faced the lies, the suspicious glares, and my own fear. I learned that justice isn't always served, but it always begins with those who dare to speak up. "Clara," I told her, taking her hand, "I'm so proud of you." She smiled, her eyes shining. "I'm proud of you too, Mom." And in that moment, I knew that no matter how painful the past was, together we would build a better future. For Clara, for little Luke, and for all the women who need a ray of hope. The story you have just heard has been modified in names and locations to protect the identities of the people involved. We don't tell this to judge, but in the hope that someone will listen and stop to reflect. How many mothers are suffering in silence within their own homes? I really wonder, if you were in my place, what would you do? Would you choose to stay silent to keep the peace? Or would you dare to face it all to get your voice back? I want to know your opinion, because every story is like a candle that can light the way for someone else. God always blesses, and I'm convinced that courage leads us to better days. Meanwhile, on the end screen, I'm leaving you with 2 of the channel's most beloved stories. I'm sure they will surprise you. Thank you for staying with me until this moment.